We got involved in Escape from New York, as I recall. Early on, Roger Corman had a facility that he'd used for his own films. This was after Battle Beyond the Stars. He was looking to help pay the rent. And John Carpenter approached us because he liked some of the effects that we did on Battle Beyond the Stars.
He happened to come in right at the time we were involved with a very complicated miniature shot where we were doing an awful lot of in-camera effects.
And we were constantly trying to find new ways to do things in that sort of manner because it was very direct. If you could do it in camera, you could see everything there. It worked quite well for the director too, because the director could say, "That's it. I know that's right," or change something. So from early on, that was the approach that we always had, and that was the approach that he preferred.
Among the real challenges on Escape from New York is one, this was a larger budget film than we had been working on, and the quality level was one thing. We would be matching very specific things in the production, whereas on Battle Beyond the Stars, one of the advantages there is that we were able to invent an awful lot of stuff and sort of improvise with what was there. For Escape from New York, what we had to do was match an awful lot of existing locations that were in St. Louis, as well as the Manhattan skyline, et cetera, et cetera. So there were very specific things that we had to match dead on. So we had issues of scale, reference, proportions, colorations, all those things that we had to match. Plus, this was done on a fairly tight budget. Even though this was a bigger film, other people who had bid on Escape from New York were bidding higher prices. So to be competitive, as we were sort of the new kids on the block, we had to come in on a very, very, very practical budget for them. So we built, I believe we worked for several weeks just building models, and then we had to hit the ground running in terms of shooting. So we didn't have a lot of time. There was a quick turnover, and we were working simultaneously with live action. So we were sometimes getting the reference from live action just as we were ready to build and shoot things.
One of the bigger challenges that had John Carpenter was concerned about was a shot of Manhattan at night, because now this is the entire city at night, but without the lights of the buildings. It was dark. And except for the lights from the street lights that the prisoners had somehow made operate, the city was dark. So it couldn't be done day for night, which is another cheat that could have been done. So what we had to do is find a way to inexpensively build Manhattan as a miniature.
Constructing the 500th scale model of Lower Manhattan, and that was sort of my baby. That was one of the things that we thought was going to be quite a costly thing to do. So I had the idea of, well, let's get a map. Let's photograph the map. We took a negative. This was in the days when you actually had a negative and positive. Took the negative and put it in a slide projector and projected that up on the wall and traced all the streets and cut out of plywood that shape and used essentially black tape for the streets. And we made all the buildings out of cardboard. And what I did was we didn't have a lot of references, of course, way pre-internet. So one of the sources that I had for information was just a pamphlet with some pictures of Lower Manhattan. It was just this small little pamphlet. And so I took a pin and I would count the stories on these buildings using these two photographs, and I would pinpoint and count how many. I would put the pinholes, counting. Okay, this building has 30 stories, and we had figured out that scale, so we could then make these tiny little buildings, and those buildings were primarily made out of photographs or Xeroxes of photographs we had taken of buildings that were similar to the buildings in New York, and cut those up and stuck those on with spray adhesive onto these buildings that we made out of cardboard.
There were some advantages to Manhattan being dark at night rather than having the buildings all lit up, because in fact that would have set off a whole other set of problems, because now the buildings would have to have all kind of light lighting sources in it and so forth. So in a way it was good that it was a dark New York, because it meant this way we could use this fairly straightforward technique.
We chopped up rust-colored chalk and gray chalk, and used salt and bits of paper for street trash in the street.
It needed to be three-dimensional because there was at least one shot that required movement where we were close to and seeing all the detail in and approaching Manhattan. There was the camera, the plane, the president's plane was actually approaching Manhattan. It was the point of view of the president's plane. So the difficulty there was, how do we make the water appear realistic in what had to be an affordable scale miniature?
We noticed that the pattern that was on the floor that had been done by the people who laid the concrete made this fine little ripple pattern. And we noticed that if we had, it was wet at some point. This is the way what I recall was that the floor had gotten wet. It was just overspray with a Hudson sprayer. And we looked at it and realized that that pattern looked an awful lot like waves, as they would from a very high altitude. But we thought the effect worked pretty well. And for the longest time, we just wanted to keep John Carpenter off the stage so he wouldn't see how that was done. So we figured once he saw the shot in the projection and he was happy with it, that's fine. That was our secret. But eventually it got out. He found out how it was done.
The president's plane crashing into the building, to my knowledge, was not, I think it was recognized early on, couldn't be affordable to do it as a miniature. I think that was discussed early on. So the simple solution really at the time was to do it as a computer graphic, a graphic that was pretty crude by today's standards, but that solved a lot of problems, saved a lot of money.
I think the more oblique telling of that one tended to make it more of a mystery of what actually happened, but it also worked for the budget. And Carpenter was very conscious of the budget. It's one of the things that was great about working with John, is that he was very precise in his planning. He had a very clear picture of what he wanted to do, and he also had a very clear idea of how to get what he wanted, considering his budget, as well as making those limitations work for him.
Pliskin. Pliskin? Pliskin, what are you doing?
Playing with myself. I'm going in.
And the key thing really was the glider, and that was made in 3 different scales. There was a maybe a half-scale, third-scale model that was done for the glider actually landing on the rooftop on the top of the World Trade Center. Then we had about a 2-foot model that was used for most of the motion control shots, which is the shots were, the majority of the shots where it's coming in above Manhattan, where it's turning, coming in down low, and heading toward the World Trade Center. And then we had a very small model, and I'll describe it. It was about this big, about that big, a couple of maybe 4 or 5 inches long. That was done for a particular shot where the glider is just sitting on top of the World Trade Center, and we have a direct God point of view looking directly down on it. I wasn't too crazy about the pinwheeling shot of the glider falling off the roof. I thought there were more dramatic ways of showing that tumbling. As a matter of fact, I really wanted to see it from a reverse angle, looking down the building and seeing it head toward the street and smashing. My original thought was to go on top of the studio where we were and drop the model into the addressed parking lot there, where we adjust the parking lot to ground with some model cars and just drop the glider that way. And I don't think there were a lot of people who wanted it to get wrecked, so we didn't do that.
Jim Cameron and Robert and I have worked together for years. We actually were working with him on Battle Beyond the Stars. He had come in as a model maker. He approached Chuck Comiskey, who was running the facility at the time, and wanted to, he showed us his reel, and we thought, boy, this guy is really good, and you've got to hire this guy. We really could use him here because he had a real natural talent for doing the sort of thing, it appeared. And so he was hired on during Battle Beyond the Stars, and we worked with him on Escape from New York, which followed right after. He went on after that to do some work on Galaxy of Terror. And then he went off on his own and did some other movies you may have heard of.
Well, we've always enjoyed working with Jim Cameron. Jim is very much like John Carpenter in a lot of ways, in that he's very precise and very much a believer in planning things. Very visual. As an artist, he is able to draw what he's talking about, very much wanting to plan things ahead of time, plus very creative. So you can lock yourself in a room with Jim and sit there for hours throwing around ideas of things that you've seen before, that you really like, that you'd like to do a variation of, or like one of our favorite things was like, what's never been done, kind of shot that's never been done. We'd kind of like get excited by coming up with this stuff and seeing if we could top each other, coming up with a more exciting way to present something.
But it was an interesting working experience with him because he's rather headstrong, which is kind of a polite way of saying he can be. Well, he's the way he is. He's fine. I 100% understand him. He's the kind of person that strives for perfection, and he would do it all himself if he could. If he could make an android of himself and multiples of them, he would do it. He does kind of a pretty good job of that as it is. So he had a number of shots that he was involved in on this film, and they were of a larger scale in a lot of cases, because one of the things that he did get involved in was there's a shot of the president's plane flying by moonlight, and it's the plane itself is a motion-controlled plane of a miniature. It was photographed in the background for the shot was a cloudscape, which he built using large amounts of polyester fiber film is what it is, and supported on various kinds of screening so that it would look like it was floating, and that covered up a large stage area, and that was photographed by his unit.
I very much enjoyed the Escape from New York. I thought it was a terrific film. I thought it had just the right combination of sort of a punk sensibility combined with a great action story. Very well told, and there's a great flow to John Carpenter's films. I feel he's very good with handing off one scene to another. I think there's a very strong cinematic eye. Just per shot, but as well as the connection between shots. And find him a very, very good director to work with, but I also enjoy his films. And Escape from New York was just a real trip. It just was full of a lot of fun ideas. And what could have been a very grim, downer film just had that right sense of humor to it that I think really, really worked in its favor. I love the film. I love the film. For what I did in it, I could always think of things I would like to have improved, but I sure like the film.
We felt well, we accomplished what we had set out to do, which was to do the most realistic effects we could pull off on Escape, and it was a fun film. I really liked the film a lot. I liked the characterization and the fact that we could contribute to it, and I was happy with what we did. So that's all that mattered.